Hey guys, so it's been a while. And yeah, I have no excuse other than it's just been a while. Sometimes, when you create content, you get in ebbs and flows sometimes, and there are things that you want to say in different areas, and I definitely have wanted to do more podcasts and even do more videos like I'm doing right now, and just have not had I haven't like been in the space where I wanted to do it. It's like I wanted to do it, but I need to be in the mood to do it. You know what I mean? So anyway, we're here. I'm going to stop making excuses. Thank you to everybody who sent me messages saying, "Hello, where's the podcast? Hello, can I get some videos?" When you guys tell me that, it does light a fire under my butt. I want you to know I am always thinking of you. Even if I cannot reply immediately, it is something I'm always thinking about. So I want to talk about just kind of this concept of how God always knows. Like, God knows more than you do. And he also knows what you're capable of before you realize it. And he puts you in situations where you kind of not get forced, like sometimes in a bad way, to recognize your own capabilities because God gave you the tools. And I'm going to tell you a story. Now, this is part 2 of a story that I put up on Instagram a couple of years ago when I talked about how I learned to ride a bike. So I will link that somewhere. If you're in the show notes, I'll go ahead and link that. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll go ahead and link that Instagram post so that you can see it. But I talked about how I learned how to ride a bike when I was 6. No one taught me. I simply got on a bike and I started pedaling and I never fell. And it was the first time that I probably can remember setting a very strong intention. Like, I watched somebody ride a bike. I said, I want to do that too. And I got on the bike and I started pedaling. And where most children, somebody teaches them, they have their mom or their dad holding the back and then like wielding them down the street. They're trying to balance themselves and all that, or they fall a couple times. They have the helmet, they have the knee pads and the shoulder pads. I just didn't have that experience. Not my testimony. One day I was playing outside. I saw a girl who had a bike that was similar to mine. I always had a bike that was older, like it was an older bike than what was meant for me at my age. So that kind of goes back to the concept that this is what my father bought me, and my dad kind of always would push me a little further along. But this girl had a bike that was very similar to mine, and it was the same size and everything. She was older than me. She was like maybe 10 or 11, and I was 6, and I wanted to ride her bike, and I just asked, and we had a conversation, and she said sure, and it didn't have training wheels on it. And in my little 6-year-old mind, I decided that I was going to be able to do this. I was going to ride this bike and no one was going to stop me. And the worst thing that could happen is that I would fall in the grass. Like, that was the worst thing. But in my mind, like, I watched her do this, and so I knew that I could do it if I just got on this bike. So got on the bike, started pedaling, and rode like the wind, guys. Like, I never fell, didn't even bobble. And it wasn't even like a hesitation. It was like, I'm going to get on, I'm going to start pedaling, and that's just what it's going to be. And so my dad, I guess he was looking for me in the neighborhood, and I was riding this girl's bike, and then he met me as I was riding it, and so he goes, "Oh, I guess you can ride a bike now." And I go, "Yeah." And so we took the bike back to the girl and went home. I don't know what we did. I don't know if we went to the park after or something, but I don't know why he was looking for me. Not long after that, that was in the fall of my 6-year-old life, and then I turned 7 in November, and then for Christmas, I got a brand new bike. Now, when I got this brand new bike, first of all, I didn't need a brand new bike. Let me just say that. I did not need a brand new bike. The bike that I had was fully sufficient. And like I said, it was a bike that I could grow into. It was a much older for me bike than I needed at the time. But on Christmas morning, I woke up to a brand new 10-speed bicycle that my dad had purchased for me, because for some reason he thought that a 7-year-old should have a 10-speed bike. And even looking back now, I'm like, I don't know why that was what he thought, but it is. And I remember, it was already assembled. So we went outside that day and I got on the bike, and it was so much different than my bike because, 10-speed bikes, like road bikes, have like thin wheels. My bike had brakes on the pedals, like you could like brake with the pedals. This one did not have brakes on the pedals. This one had like chain gears and like that you had to brake with the handles. So it was a very different bike than what I was accustomed to. But for some reason, he knew that I should have this bike. And for some reason, he figured that this bike was my next step. And even though I looked at the bike and I was extremely intimidated, and I kept both bikes, by the way. So he bought me this 10-speed bike, and I was still not very comfortable with it. And 2 months after that, or less than 2 months, about 6 weeks after that, my dad passed away. 6 or 7 weeks, my dad passed away. So my dad passed away when I was 7. And I still remember it because to me, I still think, like, why would he give me that bike? Like, I have no idea why any 7-year-old should have such an advanced bike. And it got me to thinking that, like, I think if I can think back to my childhood, my dad always kind of pushed me in that way. Like, it was always just a step or two beyond what I thought I was capable of. And he would always put me in these situations where I was learning something new before I thought that I should be learning that something new. Case in point with the bike. And I think about it because I think God does that to us too. Like, I think God sees what we're capable of before we can see what we're capable of. And so he puts us in positions where it causes us to stretch and where it causes us to kind of rise to the occasion, is what I was telling a friend when she was asking me about this. I said, yeah, my dad always put me in a position where I was kind of forced to rise to the occasion. In the 7 years that I lived when my dad was alive, I can think of many instances where that happened, where it was always me. And I'm going to say forced to, but I think it was good for me. I think it created habits and it created consistency, and just programming where it allowed me to see that I was capable of something more, that I was I was created to do something more than I thought, and my own limiting beliefs would have kept me stuck. But because my dad pushed me, and it wasn't in a weird, like, he wasn't like Joe Jackson, like, he would push me in directions that I feel like now, looking back as an adult, these were the direction that he probably needed to. And there were times where it was uncomfortable, and when you're 4 or 5 or 6, you don't want to do it because you want to cry. And I always say, like, I was allowed to cry. Like, I didn't get in trouble for crying. There was, if I was learning, like, I learned long division in kindergarten, for example. And I can remember sitting at the dining room table, like, at 4 years old, learning long division. And I was crying, and I was allowed to cry, but he was like, okay, well, go wash your face now and, like, come back to it. And it seems extreme to some people, but these were interests that I think I had. Like, it wasn't like he just pushed me into, like, yes, long division. There was something about me as a child that was very inquisitive. And so I wanted to learn a lot of things. And so anything that I wanted to learn, he would just take it to the next level. Oh, you want to learn math? Great. We're now going to learn long division. I'm surprised that he wasn't teaching me calculus at that point. And he probably wasn't teaching me calculus because he didn't know calculus. But like I said, I think God does the same thing, is that when we show an interest in something, or when we're headed in one particular direction, he will just create opportunities that cause us to rise to the occasion, because he can see the bigger picture and he can see us beyond ourselves. We have these limiting beliefs that cause us to think that we can only go so far, whereas God sees our entire lifespan and the entire story of our lives and where we're supposed to go, like the destiny and the location that we're supposed to get to. And he kind of knows that we have to push a little harder. And so he puts us in positions and in situations that cause us to experience growth, not always on our own timeline. Like, let's be honest. That's like my timeline as a 7-year-old was, or as a 6-year-old was, my timeline said, learn how to ride bike without training wheels. My timeline did not include getting this brand new bike that was very uncomfortable for me to be riding because it was too tall. I had to, like, get on a chair to get on. You know what I mean? Like, it was too big for me. And I think sometimes now, looking at my own life, God puts me in situations that sometimes I say the same thing still now. This is too big for me. Like, sometimes I think to myself, how did I get here? This is too big for me. All I wanted, like, and I'll talk about it, like, from a business perspective, sometimes, and I don't want to sound ungrateful, but these are the thoughts that I've actually had. Sometimes the thought is, all I wanted was, like, a business. All I wanted to do was wear yoga pants all day and have my own business and make my own money and not have a boss. Like, that's all I wanted. How did I get into this room? How did I get into a position where now, like, I'm starting to think bigger and I'm starting to get bigger opportunities? And like how did I even get there? When I first started my business, my honest to God, when I first started my business, the goal was, I think the goal that everybody has, which is a 6-figure income. Like, just get to a 6-figure income with no boss. Can you do that? And I did it quickly. And then of course that grew from like 6-figure to like, okay, let's multiple 6, and then to 7. And it's like, where did those even come from? Like, cause I just had one little small, teeny tiny little goal. And God just continued to put me in situations that caused me to stretch and caused me to grow. And part of that stretching and part of that growing also allows me to see things beyond what I thought I wanted, right? So like if I only would have stayed stuck at my little 6-figure sum goal, like, oh yay, 6-figure, and I'm not diminishing that by any stretch of the imagination. I know that there are many people who are still working towards it. But what I want to challenge you with the thought that once you hit that goal, you'll realize there's actually so much more available, and God will put you into new positions that forces you to see that there's more available. So like if I would have kept, stayed in my little 6-figure desire goal, and that would have been it, then people wouldn't have gotten helped. I wouldn't be able to serve at the capacity that I can serve. I wouldn't be, creating all the content that I create. Like I just wouldn't, because I wouldn't need to. I would getting to that didn't actually require all of the other stuff. It didn't require all the accoutrements that I get to participate in now, because my goals are just bigger. Like the vision is just bigger, because God's put me into different situations that allow me to see beyond my little limited self. And so if you're in a position, especially right now with what's happening right now, where you are starting to face yourself with what it is you desire and what it is you want, I think to a degree, this whole situation can be used to make you slightly uncomfortable and cause you to grow in a way you didn't even think you wanted. But the growth that's taking place right now, and this, I can say this for all of my clients, the growth, and myself too, the growth that's taking place right now is so quantum and so almost, it's unexpected, but it's like, wow, I didn't even know that I needed that. But here it is, and I'm being forced to face myself with it. And I mean, I'm grateful. I've had so many just crying sessions in a good way, like, because I'm so grateful and I'm so thankful with where I am right now. And I've had even conversations with my coach, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was like, I do not like this. Like, he's asking me questions and I'm like, I do not like it. This is uncomfortable and I don't want to talk about it. And I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the work because I know what's on the other side of the work. But I literally had a whole conversation with him that was like, yeah, I don't actually like this conversation. I don't like it. I don't want to feel it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't like any bit of it. But what came out of those kinds of sessions, or of me facing myself, was something that's just so much better. Like, it's growth and like, to the nth power. And who knows where it's going to take me, but it's a requirement. Like, when you are building, especially, and I'm talking specifically to entrepreneurs because I know mostly entrepreneurs listen to this, but like, when you are building, growth is required. Like, you are going to have to grow. If you are not growing, then your business is not going to grow. If you're not growing, then your leadership isn't going to grow. If you're not growing, your impact isn't going to grow. But sometimes that growth comes faster than we want it. And I think God puts us in a position to experience it sooner than we'd like it, always for our own benefit. So if I can go back to myself and my little 7-year-old self riding that bike. Now, because my dad died when I was 7, he died, like I said, 7 weeks or so after that Christmas morning, I didn't, and it's not a regret, it's just an observation. Like, I'm not judging myself for this, but I didn't actually follow through with solely riding that bike. Remember, I kept both bikes. I kept my 10-speed bike that my dad gave me that was like, okay, this is now your bike. And I kept my old bike that was the security blanket bike. It was the comfort level bike. It was the bike that, I wanted to ride because that's what I thought I was capable of. And I didn't have him like pushing me in the direction of the 10-speed bike after that happened. And so I, for a long time, was comfortable with my other bike, and I had both. And even, when we moved to another country, we moved to North Carolina, then we moved to another country, and that 10-speed bike ended up being given away to one of my older cousins, because they were older, and I was like 8, and I didn't think that it was big enough for me. I do wish that I would have, ridden it. I wish that I would have in my 7-year-old mind, I wish that I would have understood it back then, what he was trying to do, so that I could have ridden the bike. But you know what? It's okay, because everything happens for a reason. And now that I'm much older, and now we're sitting here, some like 30 years later, I can look back on it and say, I understand now that it was never just about the bike. I understand now that it was the lesson of understanding, or of learning, that I am capable of so much more than I believe. And my dad, my earthly dad, saw that in me and would put me in positions where I would have to learn it. And if my earthly dad could do it, then how much more, my heavenly Father, who is constantly, believe me, constantly doing it to me on a very regular basis. But I get the lesson, I take the lesson, and I learn it as quickly as I can, because I don't want to have to go through it again. But I also learn it as quickly as I can because I understand what God's trying to do. And I'm so thankful for those moments. Even when I'm just in tears and, like ugly crying, I just get it. And I want you to get it too. Like, don't be uncomfortable with your growth to the point where you stop growing. Be uncomfortable. You're allowed to be uncomfortable. You're allowed to be scared. You're allowed to not like it. You're allowed to even resist it to a degree. But don't do it to the point where you stop, because who you are meant to be, what you are destined to become, is always, always, always on the other side of that. So that is the show for today. I hope that it spoke to you in some way. If not, maybe the next one will. I will talk to you soon.